Today we're going to talk a little bit more about our orchids. We've had some questions come in from friends and neighbors about how to tell the difference between a flower spike and a new root coming in. So we're just going to do a quick video on how to tell the difference between some of those things. Here are a few of the orchids in our bedroom. As you can see, these are not in planter pots like some of the ones you've seen from the living room. These are all in different varieties of ceramic pots, which is on slightly different care. They tend to sink right down to the bottom when we're soaking them. But today we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the difference between when a plant comes in, when a new spike comes in for a flower, and when a new root is coming in, and how to tell the difference between those two things. This is a great example of a root spike coming in. I'm going to get a close-up here. One thing you might notice about the root coming in is that it's very rounded at the tip of it. That is not the case with a flower spike that is coming in. Those tend to be a little bit flatter. They tend to also have kind of a split to them. But how I always know that it's a root coming in is that it seems more bulbous to me than anything else. It's almost like it's breaking out of a casing of a new root. I'm going to show you one next that is a little bit further along the way, but it's new root growth. And that is this one at the far end here. Notice it's very bright green. That is a new root coming in. Again, very rounded. And roots may go in any direction. Since these are an aerial plant in nature, you might notice that they'll shoot straight up in the air, such as these ones are on this orchid. So they aren't necessarily going to travel along the top of the soil or, throughout. If you have a pot with holes in it, they're not necessarily going to grow out of the holes in that pot. They can go in any direction. So just because it is coming up in the air, such as the ones out of this pot, does not mean that it is a flower spike. This plant is an excellent example of one that has a combination of roots and a new flower spike coming out, but we'll get to that one shortly. This plant is the one that I want to show you next, which actually has a very, very, very young flower spike coming in, and shows what it looks like at the very early stages of just coming out. So I'm gonna get a close-up of this and we'll show you a little bit more of what that looks like. So as you can see, and as I mentioned, this flower spike is flatter rather than rounded the way that the roots are. It is also has kind of a break down at the base here where it is coming from. This is less like the casing that the roots break out of. And let me see if I can get even a little bit closer here. There's a split at the very front of it, which you'll notice is where more of that spike is going to grow out of. So again, the rounded root coming out almost like a worm, and the flatter flower spike. Okay, now we're coming back to this plant. The one that I mentioned is a great example of roots and a new flower spike, all shooting up into the air. Now, I'm pretty convinced that this plant does this because it really wants more airflow for these roots. And this is a plant that I do intend on repotting in the very near future because it seems, though it seems really happy, it's growing new roots, it's growing a flower spike. These roots are definitely in search of something. All that aside, you can see these guys are the roots that are coming out all over the place. And this happy little fellow is my new flower shoot that is coming out. You'll notice that there's a color difference between the roots that are coming out and that flower shoot. Shaky camera view. And you'll notice that the tip of that flower shoot looks quite different than the tips of those roots. So once they get a little bit further out and grown out, it's very evident the difference between these. I find that right at the beginning it can be hard to tell, but once they're this long, it's pretty clear what's a root and what's a flower shoot. And obviously, once they start to have their buds on them, there's no question whether it's a root or whether it's a shoot. Thanks for joining me today.